In the 17th century, the French established the colony of Santo Domingo on the island of Hispaniola. By the year 1700, sugar plantations had cropped up around the island and were extremely profitable. According to John Green, at its peak, this island was, quote, producing 40% of the world's sugar and 60% of the world's coffee, end quote. This, of course, was all built on the back of brutal slave labor. According to John Green, many of the slaves that called Santo Domingo home were born in Africa, as living and working conditions on the island were so poor that many of the slaves on the island did not survive long enough to reproduce, so slaves continually had to be shipped in from Africa. By the late 1700s, the island was importing over 40,000 slaves a year. At the time, colonial society in Santo Domingo was stratified into 4 groups: the rich white plantation owners, a class of wealthy free people of color, a class of poorer whites that worked as artisans, and at the bottom was the class of the black slaves. The way the society was structured was inherently imbalanced. So imbalanced that according to the article, The Haitian Revolution, quote, more than 20 slave revolts occurred in the years between 1789 and 1832. The phenomenon emerged well before the French abolition of slavery or the Santo Domingo Uprising, even before the Declaration of the Rights of Man, end quote. So the way slave society in Caribbean colonies was structured continually led to uprisings and rebellions. In 1789, as the French Revolution raged across the Atlantic Ocean, the ideas of life, liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness began to make their way into Haiti. In June of 1791, Henry Gregoire, a French priest, wrote a letter to the colored people of Haiti stating, quote, "Citizens, raise your humiliated faces. To the dignity of men associate courage and the pride of a free people. You finally have a fatherland, and from this day forward you will only see the law above you. The advantage of participating in its creation will assure you the inalienable right of all peoples, that of only obeying yourselves." End quote. Later in 1791, the poorer whites, advocating for independence from France and the establishment of a democracy still built on slavery, took the capital city of Port-au-Prince. This class of poorer whites felt disenfranchised and felt that it was unfair that the class of wealthier blacks, the free people of color, had more money and power than they did. This led to fighting between the poorer whites and the free people of color. In August of 1791, against the backdrop of violence and unrest, the slaves began a revolt, led by the general Toussaint Louverture. Louverture turned an informal militia of slaves into a disciplined fighting force. As this revolution broke out, the British and Spanish saw this as an opportunity to weaken their mutual enemy, France, and jumped into the war supporting the slave revolt. In response to the British and Spanish joining the war, France officially freed the slaves on February 4th, 1794. The slaves, now fighting with the French, defeated the British and Spanish troops. At this point, Santo Domingo was still a French colony. In 1799, Napoleon seized control of power in France with dreams of rebuilding a vast French empire in North America. In 1802, Napoleon reintroduced slavery in Santo Domingo, and the second phase of the Haitian Revolution was put into motion. What resulted was a guerrilla war for the independence of Santo Domingo. The French troops, decimated by the rebels, along with disease, withdrew, and the island of Santo Domingo, renamed Haiti, was declared an independent nation on January 1st, 1804. The effects of the revolution were far-reaching. The Haitian Revolution in the early 19th century had a great effect on world politics, but it still continues to affect us to this day. Napoleon losing the colony of Santo Domingo is what convinced him to give up his dreams of rebuilding a North American empire, and Napoleon sold the Louisiana Territory to the United States. The Haitian Revolution is an indirect cause of why our nation stretches from sea to shining sea. The revolution also had many other political consequences. When the nation of Haiti was declared independent, it was just the second free nation in the Western Hemisphere, second only to the United States. It was a black nation of freed ex-slaves, and this affected deeply held beliefs about race held by many whites. As ideals of liberty and equality began to gain traction in Europe, the revolution served to open some people up to the ideas of abolition in Europe and the United States. The sweeping changes that the revolution brought in Haiti were far ahead of its time. According to the article, The Haitian Revolution, quote, "In Haiti, all citizens were legally equal regardless of color, race, or condition," end quote. It would take years before the United States and European nations followed suit. However, as a nation of ex-slaves, Haiti was severely isolated and did not have the means to develop as the United States did. The author Maximilien Laroche, in his article The Founding Myths of the Haitian Nation, asserts that due to these conditions, quote, "Since Haiti proclaimed its independence, it has always been on the defensive," end quote. The article also says that Haiti became a military state after the revolution, something that persists even to this day, claiming that, quote, "Because independence was achieved by armed struggle, in the aftermath of the 1st of January 1804, all Haitian life took on a military aspect," end quote. While the revolution had freed Haitians from slavery and from French dominance, the aftermath of the revolution was still a tough reality to grapple with. Today, the revolution matters because it was one of the first rejections of European slavery, racism, and colonialism, and continues to serve as an inspiration against racism that still exists today. The revolution remains arguably the greatest slave revolt in history, remembered by people in Haiti and around the world.